Hey, what's up, YouTube family? Welcome back. It is a new year, and I want to wish you guys all an awesome 2021. I haven't posted a video in like 2 weeks. I went on vacation, and it's been the holidays and stuff. But I will be now posting more regularly now that I got that little break out of the way. And this is part two of the managing trades. I don't know if you want to call it a series, but basically, I'm going to be covering different random scenarios, made up scenarios, and talk about how I would manage those trades. I did one in the first video. I only managed one hypothetical trade. It was a long one, but there's a lot of info covered. If you haven't watched it, I'll put it in the corner, probably somewhere to click. And this one, I'm going to be covering two more different hypothetical situations to sort of explain with examples how I look at managing my trades. So without further ado, let's jump right into scenario number one. There we go. And this is going to be a quick one, right? I just want to talk about if a trade does not act accordingly, right? When a trade doesn't go according to plan, which, of course, happens frequently. You're not going to win every trade. You got to prepare for when a trade does not work out. So let's cover that. For example, let's say we're in a downtrend, right? And I think, obviously, this is very simple. A chart's going to look messier than just like this. But for just an example, we're in a downtrend. It pulls back, and I think that it can head lower fundamentally, whatever pair this is. Let's say it's the pound. And let me use what's happening right now. Let's say it's the pound GA, the pound Australian, right? So the pound just went into a national lockdown. Their COVID cases are out of control, right? So that is not really perceived as that good. National lockdown, lots of COVID cases, more business closures, etc. Bad stuff. And then for the Australian dollar, we want a positive, right? Pair negative with the positive, so this heads lower. On the Australian dollar side, the Australian dollar performs well when there's optimism in the markets. And so right now we have the Georgia runoff elections for Congress and Senate, right? And if Democrats can win, secure a dub, then that will increase the chances of stimulus being passed, potentially $2,000 checks, right? They just passed $600 checks to Americans, but chances are there'll be more stimulus on the way if Democrats win, which is perceived overall as optimistic by the market. More stimulus is perceived as good for the economy, right? By general investor sentiment. So with this information, we think this will head lower. And so let's say we get in, starts pulling back. We hop in a trade right here on a short, right? And so let's say my stop's above here, right? Nice stop, because if this thing can get above this level, then I'm not interested in the trade anymore. That invalidates my idea that this thing is heading lower. Now, it doesn't mean this thing for sure after it breaks above will not do this, but the chances are a lot less likely if this thing could break this high, because investors are looking at this and they're pushing price past it. It means there's not much selling demand as opposed to buying demand for this pair. So let's say we hop into trade here. This is like our stop area, and our target is, let's just say, down here, right? So we have a nice, like, solid 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 4-to-1 risk reward, whatever it is. Nice risk reward, nice trade idea. Good trade, solid. We're moving forward. And so let's say we get a pullback. It's starting to look good. We're in profit a tiny bit, and it's looking good. Nothing to do here, right? Next thing we're targeting is going to be this low. Once it hits this low, then we will most likely move our stops break even. Why is that? Well, let's say it eventually does get to this low, and it starts pulling back. Well, if it can pull back all the way up to here, that's almost to the top of this area, right? If it can pull back up to there, does this look super bearish to you? The fact that it didn't break this low, it could hold, and there's strong buying demand, that doesn't seem very bearish. The sentiment would not be super bearish because there wouldn't be this many buyers, right? It would not look like this if it was very bearish and we just get stopped out at break even. Again, doesn't mean it's not going to do this. It just means the probability is less likely it will do that, right? Anyways, let's say it gets to here. Actually, no, because I said this one's going to be one where it doesn't go according to plan. So this is the next area we're targeting before we move our stop loss. Right? Maybe take a little bit of partial profits, but naturally I would like to see it break the low first before I would start taking serious partial profits, right? And then take some along the way. But let's say it starts sort of ranging at this area, right? It starts pulling back up a little bit, right? Then at this point, it looks like, hey, maybe it's like a head and shoulders pattern because it's holding this area nicely and pulling back. Now, it doesn't, again, mean that it can't do that. It's very possible. So it doesn't mean as soon as we see this reversing, we're going to hop out of the trade because that is trading more based out of fear than trading based on your rules, right? So let's say the fundamentals haven't really changed. Nothing's changed. But it looks like this. And so, but we haven't done anything yet. So we haven't moved our stop loss. We haven't done anything. So at this point, if it does keep heading lower, then great. Nothing happens. Everything's good. But if it doesn't go according to plan and it sort of does this, then that's concerning, right? And let's say our entry is right here. So now we're a tiny bit in the red from being in profit, right? This does not look very bearish to me at all, because it held and then zooming in a little here, it held and then it pulled back and then it broke another high. So now it's in the tiny little uptrend. That is not a good sign for our trade, and so I would probably then move my stop loss slightly above here or something like that. So if it continues and it breaks and makes a new high, guess what? This now just formed a new higher high, higher low. We do not want to be in the trade. So I'd get out at a much smaller loss than waiting for it to hit my full stop out, right? Maybe I get out for a 10, 20 pip loss as opposed to a 50, 60, 70 pip loss, right? Saving myself some of those losses because the probability was no longer in my favor. Yeah, it could do this from that point and I would be upset, but the chances are less likely, right? And not to mention, I saved myself that big loss. I just took a small loss. So if I want to hop back in here, if I still think this thing can go down, then I can do that. I can get back in. There's no rules telling me I can't. And then if it works out, great. But it's just about managing your downside. So that's example number one. That's how I view it. Very discretionary. As you can tell, I do have rules, but those rules are also based around what's happening on the charts. It's not just I sell my stop, set my TP, and I just walk away and don't do absolutely anything. I still keep a lookout and see if there's anything I could do to help manage my downside, manage my risk, right? Because guess what? If it did this and then it did this and it did that, there's nothing to manage. I'm not going to be worried or fearful or scared at any point during this because it's following my rules. It's moving according to plan. And so I don't need to move my stop loss. I don't need to move my stop loss lower and be scared about the trade, right? I'm only scared, and I say scared, aka, worried about my downside when, worried about my risk and my capital and blah, 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 when the chart acts funny. When it does something not according to plan, right? So implement that into your trading if you can, if it works for your system. And I think your stress will be lower. The only problem is do not, and I'm not saying this to preach. I'm saying this because I've done it so many times. I've made this mistake so many times. Because it's so discretionary that it doesn't look very good. I'm going to move my stop a little lower. I'm going to do this, going to do that. Do not micromanage your trades. I've done that too many times. That happened with me on GJ about a week ago. I missed out on an amazing trade. I missed out on a good trading opportunity. I would have made it would have been a great trade. And what happened was it was in an uptrend. This was GJ, pulled back and started sort of consolidating. And I was like, okay, this looks like a good buying opportunity. I hopped in a buy. My stop loss was like down here. Target was above here, but I was targeting this high too, because that was still a good risk reward if it got up to these highs. So this was the trade idea, and it sort of started chopping around, and then I think it got a little higher there, and then I moved my stop loss below like a low like that. I moved my stop loss something like that, and then I got out of the trade at break even. I was like, okay, all right, solid. I managed my downside, but it just did that, right? So that's an example of micromanaging. I should have just moved my stop loss up below this low, which is still limiting my risk, but not to this point. That's a little too much, right? So that's an example of just letting my fear get the best of me and micromanaging the trade too much, right? So that's the only problem with not just setting hard stop, hard TP, is you might micromanage, right? So that's just something you need to focus on and work on, and just keep repeating to yourself not to do. Anyways, let's move on to the second example. All right, so example number 2. All right, so in this example, let's say we're in an uptrend. Let's say we're in an uptrend here, and it sort of starts ranging, and I don't really trade ranges, so I'm like, okay, the fundamentals are kind of mixed, nothing really driving this, nothing happening. I'm not going to touch it, right? I'm not going to trade it. But then let's say all of a sudden something happens, or let's say this is a pair. Let's say this is Euro, New Zealand dollar. All right. And let's say the Euro is kind of neutral. The Euro, not much is happening, right? So the Euro's neutral. But the New Zealand dollar, let's say it's been weak, right? So EN would head higher if the New Zealand dollar is weak, and this is neutral. Let's say it's been heading higher because the market has been thinking that the central bank for New Zealand, the RBNZ, let's say the market thinks they're going to cut rates in a month or two, right? So the market thinks they're going to cut rates. It was heading lower. The New Zealand dollar was heading lower, driving EN higher, and it's been chopping around. And then let's just say, for example's sake, the RBNZ comes out with this statement, or one of the members or something happens, and all of a sudden the chances of them cutting rates are lower, right? They're not going to cut rates anymore. Never mind, right? That's not going to happen. Well, in this case, then the New Zealand dollar should gain some strength, right? They're not cutting rates anymore. That's good for the currency. So let's say this heads lower. Now all of a sudden we have a bias we can trade off of, right? It's now in a downtrend, or it broke this low. The fundamentals kind of support it. Everything's looking good, whatever. Let's say we hop in like right here or something, starts consolidating. We hop in a sell, and our stop loss would be above here, right? And let's say our right here, this will be maybe where we move our stop loss to break even, and we're targeting like down here. All right, so this is the trade idea. This is what we're thinking. It's going to reverse this move higher, right? Very simple. And in this case, let's say it kind of does this, right? That's a little bit concerning, but because it didn't move lower too much, right? I'm not super concerned, right? And then let's say Now it does something like that. Okay, things are looking decent. And then let's say it breaks this low. That's obviously a great sign for our trade. It means that there's sellers coming in. It means we're doing good. All right, let's say our entry price is right there. Now, all of a sudden, now the price made a new low, right? If it came up to break this high again, I would not see that as super bearish anymore. So at this point, now that price is sitting right here, I would move the stop loss and put it, I'd move the stop loss and put it right here, right above this high. Again, reducing my risk a little bit, but also making sure the trade has some room to breathe. All right, so let's say it does something like that, a little bit scary, but then comes back down to this level. At this point, I'm moving my stop loss to break even, which is right here. So, I got in here, but this is the price, right? So this is where break even is, right? This level, right? Because if it can come down to this strong support level and then it could push up from there, then, we could see, the start of this uptrend and the breaking of this downtrend. So with that being said, that is how I'd manage in that situation, right? So a lot of it is based around sort of market structure. Even though I am a fundamental trader, I like looking at market structure and price action because that tells you what the market is thinking. Do they think the New Zealand dollar is going to reverse that because of because the RBNZ is not cutting rates? Do they think the euro is pretty neutral, right? Is there something I'm missing with the euro? Maybe it's strong for some reason I'm not aware of, right? So price action will tell you all that. That's why I like using it in conjunction with fundamentals. Anyways, let's say it sort of bounces from this level, and then at this point, I wouldn't do anything. I'd just wait, and then it comes and breaks. At this point, I'd probably be taking some partial profits, right? Because our main stop was up here. We're probably up at least 2-to-1 risk reward, right? At least. And so, I want to capture some of these gains because if it reverses from here, I had a nice winner and I didn't collect any profits from it. So, I'd probably take like 50% off at least from the trade at this point, if not a little more, depending on how strongly I feel about it and how the price action is going and all of that. And then after that, I'll just let it play out, right? Let's say I take 60% off at that point, and then I'm letting the rest run, right? Either it's going to come back and stop me out, or it's going to just keep going and then, just give me more profits. So let's say it just chops around and then finally hits this strong support area, whatever it is. And let's say we're up at this point now 3-to-1 or 4-to-1. At this point, I'm probably taking at least 30% off. So I have very little running at this point, right? A low amount running on the trade. So at this point, I'm basically mostly out of the trade. Either it's going to keep running down and give me a little bit more profit, or it's going to stop me out and I'll just lose a little bit of profits, right? So at this point, most of the trade is done. I've taken profits. I made money. And then from there, if it keeps running, I'll take some more off, right? I'll take, as it keeps going down, 5% off, and then eventually just close out the trade. And yeah, so that is how I manage trades. I hope this gave you a really good idea about how I would do that in general. And yeah, I hope you learned something. Please let me know in the comments section any questions or any value you gained. I would love to hear about it, or any video ideas, right? Maybe video ideas that I'm not posting, not even thinking of. Let me know in the comments. I would love to get some fresh perspective. And super important, because this strategy is not going to work. None of this is going to work unless you hit that like button down below and you subscribe to the channel, because it does help me out a lot. And if you gained value, I'm sure you'd want to give back to the channel as well. It's free and takes 1 second, and I will see you guys in the next one.
a town where most of the people are so close-minded. They going to school and they working a job, but they don't even like it. I won't be put in a box. Nobody telling me what I should rock. Nobody telling me what I